Hello, Dan.
Hello.
It's nice to see you again.
So good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. This is, last year was kind of a 10th anniversary, right?
I think since we started, our first album came out in 2013. So I think the part
2011 Floor.
Yeah. Yes, I guess it was. Which is completely insane. I can't believe we're still allowed to be making music and releasing it.
Well, what was interesting was when I go back into those interviews and I went back to look at who you were a decade ago. And so many of the bands that you spoke about that you went to see aren't really certainly at the same level you are anymore. Yeah. And they didn't last that amount of time. Do you ever think about why it is you are where you are and how you got to this place?
I have no idea. I think I'm in a perpetual state of weird denial about it because I don't know, I guess this last sort of couple of weeks of releasing this album have been really helpful for me and interesting because I just get on with my life and make music and we work away on the things, and particularly over the last 2 years everything's felt quite kind of removed and intangible, almost like releasing music into a vacuum. But this last couple of weeks being on tour, just chatting to loads of people about the album, it's a quite helpful reminder to me that we do still exist and this is still a thing, because I think my way of processing it all right from the start, all of us, it's been just sort of head down, think about the next thing, work hard and try not to sort of, I don't know, like this kind of perpetual denial state has run through everything. So it's surreal. I mean, doing interviews and having, whoever's interviewing you read out a bit of the press release with some like crazy stats is always very weird. And but it's nice. Yeah, I can't. Again, 10 years. I can't believe it. It's mad.
Is making music, Dan, something that you have to do to process what's going on in your mind, or is it a distraction from you having to deal with some of the things that go through your mind?
That's a really good question. I was reading, Zadie Smith wrote a piece, I think it was an essay to go with some sort of COVID-related short pieces that she wrote that came out as a book, I think last year or the year before. And she was talking about writing. And for her, she said, it's not about working hard, the amount, her output, it's for her, it's a pathology, it's an addiction, and I think, I guess I really related to that. I was like, oh God, yeah, I just get on with it. I just really love writing all the time. And I think it's a bit of both. It's definitely a distraction. Like for me, I used to write songs, and not ever expect anyone to hear them, and it was just for myself, and it would be like after school or after uni or after work, and it was definitely a form of escape, a form of distraction. It's getting to put headphones on, sit at a laptop, make these songs, and sort of take myself to a completely different place, to Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii, or into an episode of Twin Peaks, or wherever, into Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, and also reflect my life. And I think as our albums have progressed, just to sort of try and reflect what it is to be a person in such a strange and confusing and complicated world, particularly filtered via, by the media that we all consume. So it's been really helpful and cathartic in that. And on this new album, we talk a lot about the future and what that might be, and our relationship with the future, and how, our current environment can feel a lot like a bizarre dystopian science fiction. I guess we set out to make a sci-fi and realised it's actually just an album about now. And there's a song called Plug In on the album that was very much just a sort of, it's a kind of calling out of everybody, myself included, and a sort of big ramble. And that was quite cathartic to write, because making this album, I watched a lot of films again and read a lot of books and listened to a lot of podcasts and sort of immersed myself in the ideas and the themes of this album and what we wanted it to be. And that was the last song I wrote, and I just wrote it at home. It was like, here, I can get everything off my chest. So yeah, I guess to very sprawlingly answer your question of about 45 minutes ago, it's both. It's both. I'm sure there's a lot of avoidance in me doing what I do, but there's also, hopefully a fair amount of engagement.
Is pessimism, have you learnt to channel pessimism as an energy?
Perhaps. I don't know.
Because reading lots of dystopian science fiction will certainly help you with pessimism.
Yeah, I mean,
It's really optimistic.
what I've tried to balance it with is I think obviously with science fiction, it's about imagining a future that is potentially awful in order to comment on the now and make, sort of social criticism and political criticism, and that's really interesting, and I think in its own way, it's a form of trying to warn about the future. Look at 1984, and unfortunately, as we talk about on the album, like loads of the things that was kind of very loudly trying to warn about have come to pass and are everyday part of reality, which is mad. But I tried to balance it in the album with a kind of potentially naive kind of finding solace in humanity and in sort of in the everyday and human relationships. But also, I'm really interested in the idea of people who do affect and can affect change in the future. People like Greta, activists, campaigners, scientists, inventors, those people who, I think it's fascinating, and I don't have one of these, but to have a mind where you could, you can see something that's wrong with the world, imagine that it could be better, and then actually work hard to manifest that into reality. And that's amazing. And I think every time you can, watch the news and feel super negative about how everything is, you then just get to see someone like Greta or thought leaders or people who are spending their whole lives, or NHS workers, whatever, like people who can see something that's wrong and imagine that it could be fixed, or, and try and steer everything in that direction. And that for me is really optimistic and hopeful. So it's the idea, I guess, so within the album there's this thing of imagining a better future, because some people do, and then they actually make it happen, and that's so incredible. So as the pessimist in the room, I'm there being like, everything's terrible. But at least someone else is saying it's not.
What is your own relationship like with your phone?
Awful. Absolutely abysmal. I think when we started touring really hard back at the beginning, and suddenly, we were all, in our early 20s, so we all had like lives and friendships and, and yeah, like we had lives at home. It wasn't like this happened to us when we were sort of still kids. So we all, slightly freaked out at missing out on loads, and we're so grateful to be, touring and doing this thing, but also at the same time really missing everything else. So I think I used like basically WhatsApp, and as it sort of started, was an amazing crutch for me to be able to just be in touch with everyone at home, being in groups with friends and stuff. For someone who has massive constant fear of missing out, it was amazing to have that as a way to sort of stay in touch with people. But I think that as a way in, it became a bit of a crutch when we were away, and it led to me just being on my phone a lot. And like with everybody, they're kind of amazing, and they're also awful at the same time. It's your newspaper, it's your music, it's your window into your friends' lives, it's everything. Like, I try to stay off social media as much as possible, but I still manage to use my phone way too much. And it's so bad, I think, in thinking about it in the context of this album. We like to think maybe that we can all multitask and you can, be in a conversation and glance down at your phone. But the reality is, the second that you look at that phone, your brain is somewhere else, And yeah, I guess in the album we sort of talk a lot. Sorry, I keep referencing the album. That's really embarrassing.
No, you should.
But
you should. It's a really good album.
It's all about it's all about the things we do to escape our minds and escape reality. And I think, our phones it's this device that is filled with, the opportunity for connection and connectivity. Obviously, that's in its very nature, but it's also, it can be really isolating, and it's strangely normalized in a lot of people's lives. The idea that you could just pick up your phone in the middle of a conversation is something that's normalised and potentially not okay. So sorry to everyone I've ever picked my phone up to in the middle of a conversation.
Well, it's
What's really your relationship with your phone like? Sorry.
Well, it's I'm detoxing.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so I came off Twitter for the whole of January, and I'm now just trying to just not. So because there's a brilliant book which you should read, actually, by Sherry Turkle, who's a professor at MIT, called Alone Together, which is all about how technology was supposed to connect us, but actually made us more alone.
Yeah, totally.
And these are the themes. It's quite interesting. When I was listening to the album, listening to the lyrics, there's so much of this that we kind of sleptwalk into the
reality. Yeah, totally. And I feel like in that very boringly long story that I just told about WhatsApp, I feel I'm exactly the same. I sort of, it's I think, I'm in my mid 30s, and it's interesting to have, I remember being at university when Facebook just started, and I remember Twitter starting, and all these different tech companies that were kind of novel, and how watching them grow and become such huge parts of everyone's lives, and potentially affect elections and all of these changes and developments, which we've just wandered into. It is mad. In the last sort of, I don't know, 5 years, we've all kind of, I don't know, I guess we're living through the reality of the internet having seeped into every single part of every single part of life. And it's fascinating. And we're seeing what happens when online world leaks out into the real world. And you're right. I guess on the album we tried to take the view that it's not about, there's no sort of us waving a like tech is bad flag, because that's a kind of, that would be ridiculous. Like, there are so many ways, look at the last couple of years and the use of screens to connect people. There are so many ways in which it's amazing, and it can offer people wonderful communities online that they wouldn't have otherwise found, and amazing opportunities. But the drawbacks are terrible as well. And yeah, like you said, you could be with people but completely isolated. It's strange.
Are there any external validations that you wish you didn't need?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, I think about, when it comes to music, I think I would love to be able to just, I can quite happily make loads of songs and know that they'll never go anywhere, and love the process and love hearing what we managed to make. But yeah, it's weird. I guess the whole system is set up to require some sort of validation at the end of it. We're so conditioned now to online expect likes or whatever, and it's that's just, like you said, we've sort of sleptwalked into this position of I think about when I used to make songs as a teenager, and I was recording on like a 12 track, and there wasn't really a space to put songs up online, and I feel that I made demos, and I know that if I made them now or 5 years ago, I would be putting them online, and the expectation would be like, I want that you'd want feedback and you'd want validation and that kind of stuff, and I guess there's a part of me that's grateful that when I was doing that in the early days, that wasn't the thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're on the day of the Brit Awards, and in 2013, before you'd had big hits, you were there on your own, because the label wouldn't pay for the rest of the boys to come. Right? Fast forward just 1 year, 4 nominations, and you're all there, suited and booted, ready to go, right? Do any of those things form a kind of validation for you, to sit in those rooms with your peers, to be handed awards?
I think it's funny. I think music, and I think a lot of creative industries, it's funny you said that alone together thing. I think a lot about how many sort of young bands and young artists and young musicians are kind of going through a similar experience, but because of the nature of touring and it being quite siloed, and because of the nature of being in studios, we made our first 3 albums entirely, by ourselves with the same, I co-produced it with my friend, and we didn't really include people in the process. So I didn't really meet music industry people on the sort of musical side through working until a bit later on. And with touring, obviously you make friends and you meet other artists on the road at festivals, but when you're off doing your own tours, like it's rare that you intersect. So I think you can have these experiences that can feel within your little group. It can feel quite kind of separate and solitary. So it's funny to call them peers. I guess we also always avoided kind of famey stuff, so we didn't really come across people that much. We were always so obsessed with getting back to like our mates who have nothing to do with music or anything like that it was weird. But that was really strange. I think when our first album came out, we were sort of quite DIY, and we were kind of doing it all ourselves, and we could see that this audience was growing, and we were so grateful for it, and it was amazing. But we weren't really getting any sort of engagement or validation from the sort of usual kind of media. No. Like the press kind of didn't really want to acknowledge us, and obviously we were getting played on the radio, which was amazing, but we weren't doing things like press and TV, and we weren't really getting hyped up. There were all these brilliant lists every year of exciting new artists to look out for, and we weren't on any of them. So it was sort of strange when it did then happen. I felt like we didn't get that. And I feel bad for artists who get given a huge amount of hype and then, potentially don't fulfill what people expect them to, because that must be, you know, that must really mess with your head in a totally different way. Sorry, I had to stop myself from swearing. But yeah, for us, I think it was like the opposite. You know, we weren't expecting it. No one was. It was so mad. It was so mad. I can't believe like those first couple of years just were like, you know, still can't quite process what happened.
So, you know, go back a decade now, and the excitement to go into Abbey Road and record Strings for the first time, or the first time you sold out the Scala, and then you sold out Coco in London, and all of these things were happening.
Yeah.
What are those moments now? Because you had those special moments where it was like, they know my words.
I know,
they're singing them
mad.
back to me. There's tens of thousands of people turned up at a festival.
Those moments now. I think loads of those moments are still the same, and I think, you know, particularly post pandemic. I mean, not post. Obviously, we're still in it, but like, you know, as
Post lockdown.
Post lockdown, yeah. Thank you. Post lockdowns, you know, getting to go back and do these things again. You know, this tour that we're on at the moment, we're playing sort of much smaller venues, but it's so amazing. Like, I'm not someone that's massively comfortable on stage, so I don't get that excited about touring, because I'd much rather sort of be recording and be in the studio. But just getting to be on stage in a room with all these people that just love our music is so like wonderfully overwhelming. Like, it's really, really cool. And
back to those sizes, Coco,
yeah,
and Scala,
totally,
London,
yeah.
those kind of sizes.
I mean, you know, I think I said it to you before, but my barometer of our success early on was, you know, London venues. I'm from London, so, you know, I used to go to gigs there all the time. So getting to sort of move up capacity sizes through the venues was, for me, just so surreal, you know, within our first album. Because there's a venue called Shepherd's Bush Empire in London, which is about like 1,500, 2,000.
That's Ed Sheeran's favourite venue.
Yeah, it's an amazing venue.
Yeah, it's amazing venue.
But for me, growing up in London, I was like, well, that is the pinnacle. You know, I thought if we ever got to play there, you know, we'd have completely peaked. And you know, we did a couple of sold-out shows there before our album came out. You know, and then through that whole campaign, worked our way up to basically the O2, which is, you know, completely insane. So I don't know. I guess now, I still feel like massively grateful getting to put an album out. You know, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work, and I'm really aware that, you know, not that many artists or bands, you know, get to a fourth album. So, you know, that's hugely grateful, and seeing people respond to it. You know, there's so much being released all the time. There's so much content everywhere. You know, be it the amount of songs that go up on streaming services every day, the amount of amazing TV that's going up on streaming services, you know, the amount of content online that we are all potentially bombarded with, you know, it's hard to cut through. So I guess just getting to release an album and see people react to it is hugely gratifying. I've definitely felt very strange over the last couple of years putting songs out, and it just, you know, all the usual markers of us being on tour and seeing people respond to a song haven't existed for obvious reasons. So yeah, I definitely it's just releasing this album finally has felt great.
How are the dreams of your fans being translated on stage? This is an extraordinary element of what you're doing right now.
So the album it's about a lot of things, but, you know, partly it's about escapism, and I was initially inspired by a show that I saw at Edinburgh Festival a couple of years ago, that dealt with that this comedian was talked about dealing with childhood trauma by having a thing called maladaptive daydreaming, where you can live in a dream, you know, in a daydream for sort of like 6 or 7 hours of the day, and almost like an alternate life. And I think it's a way of dealing with trauma. And that just got me thinking so much about how amazing, and, you know, the human mind is with coping and trying to find ways to sort of step out of your consciousness or your thoughts or your life, you know, for long or short periods of time, and how that can be great and potentially not great at the same time. So the whole theme of dreaming and escapism is sort of laced through the album. So we thought, right, in wanting to release the album and make it sort of really inclusive, like, what can we do here? So one of the things that we've done is get people to go to this website and enter in their dreams, and we've kind of amalgamated them all into these visuals that accompany the album, and they're kind of constantly changing on one of the streaming services, as a kind of constantly morphing art piece that visually accompanies the album. But also on tour, on this little tour that we're doing, we've been getting people to send in their dreams, both online and in the room. And, you know, some of our crew are going out and recording people's dreams from the queue on the way in. And then there's one particular song that we do where we basically sing their dreams back at them. So I like print out a list of like 4 or 5 different dreams, and they're completely mad. And I actually I read 1 or 2, and then some of them I try and react to on the spot. So I sing through this, I'm singing through a vocoder and through autotune, and so is Charlie. And it's completely mad, basically just improvising on the spot on stage. And we're a band that like to like rehearse and know what we're doing. So even just doing the improvising thing is very different for us. But it's been really fun. It's been hilarious. Like a lot of people afterwards have been like, we weren't expecting to come to a comedy show tonight. So I think, you know, when it's like, when you're singing through hard tuning, sounding a little bit like Kanye and saying like Sarah from Preston, she was in a car park last night with Justin Bieber in her dream. He was stealing her car. You know, seeing Sarah from Preston in the room lose her absolute mind because she's doing that. It's been wicked. It's been really fun.
Is that something you needed to do to kind of push you out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, this whole tour is. So we're doing a bigger kind of arena tour in a couple of months, but this tour is totally different. You know, it's Charlie Barnes, our live guitarist, and I put together this show that's building the songs up from scratch using loop pedals, because that's what we both sort of started out doing pre-Bastille, and we're sort of taking requests, and the set is different every night, and it's just really nice because normally when you do a big show, and as someone that's not comfortable on stage, we like to put together lots of visuals and make it a kind of big, you know, expand the world of the album, make it this big audio-visual thing. And so it's quite set in what you're playing every night, and there's not a huge amount of freedom to kind of move that around. But this is amazing. Like, you know, every night is different. It's totally dependent on the crowd, you know, what their dreams are, what songs they've requested. You know, we're working out songs we've not played in years in sound check in different ways. I, as the lead singer, often don't play instruments, so I'm like, oh God, what are the chords? What are the chords? But it's been wonderful. Like, you know, both to be in smaller rooms, you know, small venues, obviously utterly vital, particularly to new upcoming bands. You know, we cut our teeth in those venues, and it's been a very, very hard year, you know, a couple of years for them. So, you know, nice to be there, be supporting that, and just be able to look everyone in the eye as they're laughing at me singing their dream. But yeah, it's been great.
When you are backstage after the show, are you the guy that's going, that was amazing, guys, and high-fiving each other? Or are you the guy that's going, that person in the third row looked like they weren't having a good time?
Yeah, I'm 100% that person. We can be at a big show, we'll be playing, and there'll be like, you know, lots and lots of people jumping up and down having the best time. I will always manage to fixate on the one guy who's like, my girlfriend dragged me here, why am I here? I will zone in on that person, and I'll be like, oh, it's like, I think it's such a human thing, isn't it? Like, you know,
yes, it is.
You can read loads and loads of nice things, and then the one mean one is the one that will sort of echo around your brain forever. And it's the same with the show.
Can you fortify your mind to not be that person, or do you not
teach me how?
Right,
how do I do it?
Because do you not want to be that person, or do you just think, well, that's part of who I am. That's part of what makes me who I am.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. You know, I'd like. I'm sure the sort of layers of pessimism and negativity are, I'm sure, like a defense mechanism in a lot of ways. And but yeah, I guess.
But success must have diluted that.
I think success is weird because it wasn't an expectation, but then it puts one on what you do, and that's if anything been the biggest struggle. You know, I guess for my parents, I got quite like a strong work ethic, so I love to, you know, and I love so much what we do. I love making songs, and it's why, you know, I've made this album, wrote about 2 other albums in the pandemic and an EP, and 2 other full projects with friends. You know, run a film club, and we made a documentary, and, you know, as well as all the other stuff I was doing in my life.
Book podcast,
yeah,
Simon
book
Savage,
podcast, yeah, and had a really, really good time, like working at a food bank, you know, throughout the first year, and you know, volunteering at a vaccine clinic, you know, all those things kind of outside of music. But yeah, it's been a really, really busy couple of years, and I think everyone reacted to lockdowns in different ways. My way was very much like, stay busy, everything's fine. But yeah, I guess what was your question you were asking about?
Success.
Yes.
Does it dilute those kind of feelings?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I guess it was weird for us having
pressure. It's quite interesting. You said that the more success, the bigger burden it becomes to replicate that success.
Well, I think going back to what I said before, So this all feels so self-indulgent. But going back to what I said before, not having any expectation going into our first album, I think was a blessing, because everything that happened was a huge surprise. But then having such a successful first, single and first album, then your normal is at such a ridiculous level that unless we topped that again, everything to most people around us, I guess, naturally would feel like a bit of a disappointment. So that was kind of interesting, getting to deal with that. But equally, it was coupled with us. We always sort of did things our own way. I think when we first started releasing music, people were like, "What is this? Is it indie? Is it pop? Like, what's going on? And why are they writing about volcanoes?" And so I guess we were really determined to kind of do things on our own terms. But obviously, everyone around us wanted us to kind of match the success of the first album. So that's a strange thing to navigate. But I think it was important to us to sort of not compromise in that respect.
As someone who deferred a master's in journalism, right, are you still someone who seeks out views that are opposite to your own to challenge your views on life? Or have you found yourself, and this is again, I think, going back to some of the points in the album, is just kind of drawn into a world that feels comfortable because it's just mirroring your own views?
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that. I mean, I think I definitely live in an echo chamber, with surrounded by people with similar values and similar political beliefs. I think I don't know if that's just part of growing up, or if that's a more kind of modern condition. I remember thinking back to my
parents. Most people, just to be clear, before you beat yourself up about it.
But I remember like my mum and dad, who are both very left wing, talking about people that they worked with in London. Had most of the people they worked with had the complete opposite beliefs, but that it was potentially a time where you just didn't talk about politics. Like, if you went around to friends' house for dinner, it just wasn't a thing. And I can't imagine that being a reality now. Coming out of lockdowns, we played a festival, Latitude, and backstage I was chatting to someone from another act, and it became clear in the conversation that this person was anti-vax, and that that there's like in a lot of parts of life, there's a kind of big swathe of the music industry that sort of for various reasons and various potentially misinformed perspectives, didn't believe in the vaccine. And I understand that for different communities it means different things, but it took me a while to realise, I think, because I'd so been living in lockdown and speaking to the same people and obviously working at a vaccine centre, and it was so kind of important and vital that this thing was rolled out as far and wide as it could be, that to suddenly find myself in a conversation with someone, I realised how ill-equipped I was. I wanted to, in my head I was thinking like, what, you idiot? But obviously didn't say that out loud, and was like, right, okay, adjust your brain, try and have this conversation. It would be good to be useful. All I wanted to say was, don't listen to me, don't listen to the internet, speak to your GP, like speak to a doctor. But I couldn't, I guess I was so out of practice. I realised that, we all live online and read the same media, and this feeling of kind of society being so divided is all well and good, but I think, a problem, it's not well and good, it's awful. And the problem is that we then don't engage that much with people with such opposing views. And when and if people do, often they'll just be like, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. And, it means that maybe the art of like conversation and nuanced debate has been lost slightly, because everyone online often just wants to shout at each other. but I guess, so why I told that story is,
did you decide to lean into that conversation or run away from it?
I tried to lean in, because I was thinking like, I've got one of my best mates is a GP, and that's the reason me and my friends were all sort of volunteering at the vaccine centre, and she had to have so many conversations about with people who, for whatever reason, had huge mistrust in the vaccine, or didn't want to get it, and she was having all these conversations and having to sort of try and talk people around, or reassure them. And so I was just trying to channel her, I guess.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. I was like,
How did you feel as you walked away from that conversation?
I felt maybe like I could have done it better. I think the reason I brought that up was because I just felt like, God, we're just not challenged that often with those conversations, and wanting to have them constructively, like,
and calmly.
And calmly.
Yeah.
And
with mutual respect.
Yeah, exactly. And because obviously there was a part of my brain that was going like, what?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I guess, yeah, I guess I felt relatively ill-equipped for it, but it was really, I mean, it was really helpful, eye-opening thing. If we're all living in little echo chambers, that will only have been exacerbated by 2 years of speaking to exactly the same people over and over again. So it was a real helpful, interesting reminder and an eye-opener.
It's really interesting times that we live in, which have been condensed into this record that you've made. 4 albums.
I know.
Like 4 albums, an extraordinary. I mean, I just looked at the video for Pompeii last night, and what is it, like 650 million views plus or something?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is just like
it's really crazy. Also, like that video, I mean, when we made it, I was so excited because we're going to LA to make a video, and I got really into like the script of it and planning and everything. And then it came to the day of shooting, and I am not an actor, and I'm not good on camera, and so suddenly it got to the day of doing it, and basically the director was this really cool like skater from LA, and he did not realize that he was grappling with like the most awkward, uncoordinated frontman to have ever been in a band. And so I remember him he sort of wanted me to be this like action star for this video, and all these bits where I'm like running away from zombies and stuff. And he just couldn't. Like, there's a point where I have to run in a straight line, and my legs are like buckling like a baby giraffe, and that's just haunted me forever. Like you even hear it now, you saying 650 million views. I'm like, oh god, that's 650 million people who see I can't walk in a straight line.
But you didn't necessarily want to be in the videos for the band, did you?
And initially we weren't. Yeah, I think I sort of had these naive expectations that maybe we could make music and make kind of weird pop music that people didn't know or care about who it came from, and it kind of worked. I'm trying to tell this story quickly because it's long and boring, but like I've been trying to, when we were touring, and often you can't, there's just not really the time and space to see that much when you're touring, but I love traveling so much. So a few years ago, sort of decided with some friends that every year, if we got a couple of weeks off, I'd go like backpacking in a different country that I'd not been to before. So like me and a couple of mates went to India for a few weeks, not enough time. Went to Zambia and then went to Guatemala just in 2019. And I did this.
Wait a minute, how rustic are we talking here?
Oh, like just hostels and like shared dorms, hostels, all that kind of stuff. And went up. So we were in
As someone who likes toilets to be quite clean, you were over all of that, right? There's nothing that can make you feel uncomfortable.
I guess like part of being in a band is living on a tour bus with your band and crew.
That's different to a Guatemalan hostel.
No. I hear you on that. But you've not slept. Like underneath one of your snoring, farting bandmates like every night for like months and months.
Good point, well made. Yeah, good point.
And touring, like I know it's at a certain level. I think you sort of graduate if you ever get that big to like hotels and blah blah blah. But for us, we're on a bus. You wake up in the morning, you're in a car park. You're like, right, where am I? Grab my suitcase, go find a shower and a toilet in a place you've never been to before. Like it's a pretty weird lifestyle. Anyway, so cut to Guatemala, yes. And we're going up this volcano called I think it's Arthanayake, and it's insane. You do this sort of 8-hour trek straight up a hill, like it's basically walking up such a steep thing for 8 hours. So I'm there with 2 friends, and we're in a group with just like your classic traveller bunch from around the world. So like a real ragtag group of people.
Yeah, a couple of South Africans,
a
couple of Israelis, a couple of
exactly. So we're walking up, and my friend Sophie was like, I'm not up for this. So she just put on a podcast and was like headphones on, walked the whole way up, but I didn't chat to anyone. So I was like, okay, cool. I guess I'll just get to know everyone else. So I was like chatting to everybody on the way up, and it's quite like a hardcore trek, and it gets quite high. So like, in terms of, anyway, the idea is you get to the top at like 8 p.m. and it's in tents that are on this little ledge looking out over a valley, and there's a volcano on the other side that's just constantly active. So there's lava spewing everywhere. So you get up there, and it's amazing, and you're meant to go to bed to then get up the next morning at 3 a.m. to climb to the summit. Right, so but we get to the top, and
how is this a holiday?
I know. But I was chatting to a bunch of the different people, and there was an Israeli guy who was there on his honeymoon with his wife, and then there was a Dutch guy as well who I'd been chatting to, and then the guide, who was the Guatemalan guy who didn't speak any English. They basically decided when they got to the top, they're like, oh, do you want to do an extra trek where we go down the valley and up to the mouth of the volcano so we can see the lava in real life? And I, by the way, am really bad at traveling despite all this. Like I was in like my van shoes. I was in like tracksuit bottoms. I didn't have any of the gear. And I was like, oh God, I'm so tired. We've been walking uphill for 9 hours. But I was like, yeah, when am I ever going to be here again? Sure, like, I'll do it. So I had to like go around the camp, I had to like borrow a waterproof off someone, borrow a head torch. And we set off in the pitch black and we sort of go down this valley and up and we're climbing this volcano and we get to the top and this mist descends. We're in a cloud. We're like, we're literally here for a view and I can't see anything. So we're sat at the top of this volcano and it was like, oh, we'll wait it out. Like it's getting late and we've got to be up quite soon, but we'll wait it out and see what happens. And, half an hour turns into an hour, turns into an hour and a half. So obviously it's small talk central up there. Like we're all like getting to know you. And at one point, I think the Dutch guy was like, I just don't get it. So because basically I hate talking about my job. I will never tell people what.
Hey, I think you'll find I'm in Bastille. You may have.
At a party, like, because I don't expect anyone to know who we are. And if they do, you then have to navigate the fact that they might absolutely hate your music. And I just don't want to have that conversation. So I'd always I don't lie.
What do you say?
I'll just avoid talking about it. I'll just ask people about I'd much rather hear about someone else's.
Yeah, but okay, so what do you do for a living?
I say like I write songs. Or
okay. Anything I would have heard of?
Yeah, well, that's what happens.
Of course, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So I was like, so eventually they're like, the Dutch girls like, I don't get it. So you say you travel quite a lot and you're in a band. Like, are you in like a wedding band or what? And I was like, I guess we have some songs that have been on the radio. And he was like, oh, like what? Try Me. And I was like, we had a song called Pompeii. Where normally people then are like, oh, sing it to me. I'm like, no. So I was like, yeah, we've got a song called Pompeii. And he was like, shut up. He was like, you wrote that song? I was like, yeah. And he was like, I love that song. It's huge. Basically, sorry, I'm not telling this very well. He was like, shut up. That's ridiculous. We're on a volcano and I'm with the Volcano Guy song. and then the Israeli guy was like, no way, we had that song at our wedding like last week. And I was like, what? That's insane. And then they start playing it to the Guatemalan guy that didn't speak any English and he starts singing along. And I'm like, literally, it sounds like a bad joke. I'm literally sat in a cloud on top of a volcano with these three guys who were all singing the song back at me. And I was like, oh God, this is why I don't want to talk about that. And I was like, trapped there in that conversation. But the realization I had, the nice thing that I took from it was, when we were successful at the beginning, it really freaked me out. And I realized very quickly that I love making music and I love everything that comes with it. And I'm so grateful that I get to write songs for other people and do all these different projects. But I don't want us to be famous and I really don't want to be famous. And that makes me really uncomfortable. The idea of, I don't know, whatever. So we did everything in our power to sort of not be everywhere and not be in people's faces. And that's why with the videos, like we didn't want to be in them. We're not on the artwork. And I realized that was a quite concerted effort. I tried to sort of dumb myself down in interviews and be as boring as possible because I just didn't want to be someone that people would come to for a quote or whatever. And it kind of worked. I was like, here we are, like 9 years later, I'm up a volcano in Guatemala with people from all over the world who know and love this song, but they've got no idea who I am. Like they didn't recognize me at all. We got back to the camp and we never saw the lava, by the way. The mist never descended. And then it started raining, so we did this.
Your mate, was she in a better mood at this point?
Yeah, so my two mates who were back there, she was traumatized because we've been gone for so long. It was meant to be like an hour and a half, and she was like, "They're dead. They've been killed by a volcano." Which, by the way, would be a very fitting way for me to go.
Did you hear about the Pompeii guy? Did you hear what happened to him?
Yeah, he fell in a volcano. And we never did see that lava, but yeah, I don't know. It was a nice realization, that we're lucky enough to have songs that are famous, but we as people, I don't think are, and that's something I'm hugely grateful for.
How successful were you at diverting the conversation away from you once they knew who you were and what you'd done?
The floodgates opened, and now I had to answer all the questions,
right.
which is like completely understandable. Obviously, I would be fascinated, but what I don't like talking about it in social situations is because it becomes a dominant topic, and not that I can't be bothered to talk about it, but it's obviously not as interesting to me because I'm more interested in other people and what they've got going on. But yeah, I get it. I get why you'd want to. If I met someone who was in a band, I'd have a million questions for them. So yeah.
Does that lead, do you think, to you shrinking away from social situations because of that, or do you just like to be in social situations where you aren't going to be potentially the most famous person in the room?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess, I'm really lucky to, have a really amazing group of friends who, I guess to them it's kind of, it's not interesting. One of my mates is texting me yesterday being like, there are some billboards with our faces on, which we've never had before around, there's like the album poster, but there's also faces with our billboards with our faces on, which is super weird, and sent me a message and was like, she was like, this must be such a mad time for you, mad couple of weeks releasing an album and promoting it. And she's like, I basically just forget that you're in a band sometimes. And yeah, so I think, for me and everyone in our lives, we're like, you just kind of get on with stuff and forget about it. And then every now and then you're confronted with it in a very real way, like doing BBC Breakfast just now. Suddenly I was like, oh my God, hello, what are we doing here? But I guess we've always felt like mad levels of imposter syndrome, and like we're competition winners who've just been wheeled into to these situations.
I mean, that's mad though. If you walk out on stage at the O2, right, this huge warehouse full of people who adore what you do.
Yeah, I guess it's. I never wanted it to go to our heads at all, and it can all go away so quickly. And that's
well, you've seen that with lots of bands in the last.
Yeah, totally. And I think that was the thing at the beginning. It was like I always just thought it was always going to fall apart all the time, because I think it's, as a kind of upcoming band, you don't know what the future is. You don't know what to expect. You don't know, will you kind of live or die by your next song or your next album or your next gig? Like there's no certainties at all. And I think that's a strange way to live your life. I know there are lots of jobs like that, but it's still quite an odd way, this kind of constantly transient, moving, traveling lifestyle where you don't really know what's next. So I think my way of getting around that has always just been like, it's probably going to fall apart tomorrow, and that's fine. I mean, it's not fine, it'll break my heart, but that's fine.
But you do so many other things. I mean, you mitigate against that potentially subconsciously by you work with Griff, haven't you?
Yeah. Been writing with loads of young artists recently, which is really, really fun.
Griff is super talented.
She's insanely talented. Yeah. She's so impressive. And, the fact that she's had this success and then she's gone off to make a record, and she just took herself off and did it by, the fact that she writes and produces entirely by herself is amazing. It's so brilliant. And her head is so screwed on as well. It's incredible.
Dan, what would you say to her? I mean, it's interesting. I had a conversation with Dave Grohl on the show a little while ago and asked him what he would say to
Have you seen the trailer for his movie?
No.
It looks insane. Watch it after this.
Well.
They've made a horror film where Foo Fighters go into a house in LA and I think he starts killing everyone. It's completely bonkers. I'd never thought I'd see Dave Grohl in a horror film about the Foo Fighters. Anyway.
Well, I think, you and him definitely are there right at the top of the nicest people in music. Right? You're just such really lovely people. And I asked him about advice he'd give to younger bands, and his book is superb. And he said it's okay to say no.
Yeah. I still haven't quite learned that. But yeah, no, I think there's a way to say no, and there's a way to say no nicely as well. And some people are brilliant.
Difficult if you're a pleaser, if you're naturally somebody.
I'm a massive people pleaser as well. And that with the sort of like wanting to work hard thing means that saying no is hard. But also I think
FOMO, adding FOMO to that as well.
It's a nightmare. Welcome to my brain. But I think the other thing I've just felt is this like huge gratitude of being in the situations that we're in, and as per the kind of traveling thing, like I don't mind being uncomfortable and in slightly weird situations. So I think all of that melched together. Melched is not a word. Melched together.
It is once you've said it.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Leads to that. But it's just so lucky. Like you mentioned that book podcast that I did with Arenison Okoje, who's an amazing writer, and Simon Savage, and just being able to, that was in a really busy time for us. But being able to have the opportunity to read these books, speak to these amazing people about their creative processes, was me at my most kind of fanboy and comfortable, getting to sit there with people who love books, definitely being the most stupid person in the room and the least involved in the literary scene, obviously, and getting to just, get to grill other people about their lives and their process was amazing. Like some of those conversations were so inspiring, like really, really incredible. I thought it was going to make me. I basically been wanting to go back to uni for ages, and I thought that taking that podcast on would be like a degree because it would force me to read all these books, and instead it was way more like uni than I expected, because it was like terrifyingly trying to get the books read by deadline and often missing them out and having to like Google the ending. It was like rush. Yeah, anyway, it was really fun. It was an amazing thing to be part of.
Brilliant. Well, look, Dan, it's always lovely to see you, man. It's always
Man.
lovely to
Sorry for chewing your absolute ear off.
No, it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I think I asked you about fame, and it ended up on a Guatemalan mountain.
Sorry,
I mean, that's so good.
Sorry, that's such a long story.
That's so good. No, but the story was amazing with an incredible punchline. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. So good. Such a good album.
Thank you, man.
I'm glad I got a look into your head. What an interesting place.
I know, sorry.
The amazing Dan Smith.